Good evening, folks. Oh, that's quiet, it's nice. We're going to start this portion of the program, the affirming part, and with the land acknowledgement of the territory in which we are in. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route of the Cree, Anishinaabe, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and the Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and many others whose historic languages, spiritualities, and cultures continue to influence our community. This acknowledgement reminds us of the responsibility to our relationship with the ancestral lands on which we worship, learn, live, and share. We give thanks for their stewardship of this land through the ages and for the opportunity to gather here today. Tonight, the Affirming Committee is presenting a program in regards to transgender life. I'm going to introduce the Affirming Committee. We have both our outgoing committee, which was, before we became Affirming, was a task group, and then our committee, which was formed afterwards. Then I ask the people to stand when I name them. The outgoing committee is Linda McLaren, Monica Roseberry, Kathy Kinsman, and on that committee, Louise Rogers and myself, Wilson McLennan, we joined the new committee, so we're on both. And our new committee is formed with Mary Annan, Mickey Wilson, who is our chair, AJ Januski, Rachel Young, and this is our group who will go forward. And maybe before the weekend is over, we'll have other members who may want to join us from on the floor. Thank you. Oh, and I missed one, and it's sitting here right in front of me, Gary Simpson, who was both on the committee and on the previous task force.
Friends, we've been gifted with some amazing folks that I want to briefly introduce and invite to come up and be seated here. Among this group are some longtime friends, some new friends, and I'm excited to have them come and join us tonight. So first I want to invite Emery Whiskey Jack, who is from Satellite Cree Nation in Treaty 6 territory, 23-year-old two-spirit, trans-masked, multidisciplinary artist residing in Amaskwachakan. Is that close? I am he says he's in a confident place of being unapologetically himself, thanks to the going through his rites of passage, where he received powerful affirmation. So he's passionate about liberation, reclamation, and connecting to his land, language, and culture. Emery, please join us at the front of the room. Just have a seat wherever you want. I was going to say come on down, but I guess that won't work. And Emery's mother, Lana Whiskey Jack, is also from Satellite Cree Nation and currently serving as an associate professor in the Department of Women's and Gender Studies. Dr. Whiskey Jack is an award-winning scholarist, that's scholar and artist together, author and spirit-centered community-based researcher. She's acclaimed for her work in Indigenous arts-based practices and research, sexual health and wellness, cultural and language revitalization. So contributing to ending gender and sexual violence through violence-informed and strength-based practices is her lifelong learning and vision. Lana, please come up and join us tonight. And I want to offer Lana and Emery tobacco and thank them for being here tonight and sharing their wisdom with us. Next, we have Allison Hadley. Allison is a healthcare worker, author, artist, activist, and recreational athlete. Born and raised here in Edmonton, she dedicates much of her spare time to helping and building 2S LGBTQ+ community in hopes that the roads traveled by future generations will be easier than the one that she had to take. A lifelong lover of sport before her gender transition, Allison competed internationally in 3 different sports. She's passionate about education and has already done several workshops in this area discussing the proposed harmful legislation in Alberta. Allison, please join us up front. Amanda Barrett is an educator and has been a high school counselor locally. Her work centers on support of sexual and gender minority children and youth, along with the fostering of good mental health for all students. Her commitment to the creation of inclusive, safe, and healthy work and learning environments is informed by her studies, most recently the completion of a Master of Arts in Counseling Psychology, and volunteer experience, which I can assure you are many. She's got 20 years of experience in education and wants making a safe space for students, particularly 2S LGBTQ students, is her passion. Amanda, please come up and join us. And last is Rachel, well, not last, but the last person on my list. Rachel Young is a member of our Northern Spirit Affirming Committee. Her home at Community of Faith is Grace United in Lloydminster. She volunteers on the worship committee, does vacation Bible study, Christian development, and participates and collaborates with many other committees at Grace, and particularly with their growth in the Pride community. She believes in the affirmation and celebration of all people, as well as advocating for the rights and protections of others. And I might add that Rachel was just accepted into the diaconal ministry program. So, Rachel, come on. I turned it back on at supper time. So as we prepare to hear these stories, which I hope will resonate with you and you'll take back to your own individual communities of faith, I want to lay on top of all of the work that we've heard here these last 2 days, the question of that I want you to ponder. There's no accusation, there's no judgment around this question, but we wondered if you might ponder why you wouldn't support fighting against this legislation as people of faith in the United Church. So that's what we want you to ponder as we hear these stories. And each person is going to speak for about 10 minutes or so. And then there is some folks, if I might ask them to stand, Wilson and Gary and AJ, who are going to have available pieces of paper. Gary, can you stick up your hand there? We'll get you some. No problem. We can find paper. They are going to have pens and paper. And if you have questions, we would ask you to put up your hand. Write your question down, they'll take it into the basket, it'll come up to us, and we'll answer questions at the end. We will answer questions that are appropriate, and if we decline any questions, we'll let you know why. So I would invite Emery and Lana to talk to us first, and they can sort out who is going to speak first. You're going to have to keep the mic close, so pull it out and speak.
Thank you. Danse kakio no wagamakanag. Lana whiskey jack nitsigason onexcaponitsecotinia, guaha eotoskeano tapas negio. And as Mickey mentioned, associate professor. But first and foremost, I am a mother, a wife, a grandmother, akin to so many nieces, nephews, siblings, and extended family. I'm a daughter and granddaughter of Indian residential school survivors, and this topic we're here to speak about tonight is it's at its center is it's violent, and I'd like to share why. When my son came into who he is at the tender young age of 11 years old, he became an incredible teacher to his father and I. At the time, I worked at University of Blue Quills, which is a former Indian residential school, also the first Indigenous owned and operated governed educational institution in North America since 1971. And that school is a reflection of the many different discriminating racist policies that have built Canada, from removing my grandmother, my mother from their homes to and removing our language and creating many impacts. And so Blue Quills, after the takeover, became a place of reclaiming our language, our communities, our culture, our stories, our songs. And to me, it's like the first decolonial school. And so this is where we connected back to culture, our cultural practices, back to the land. And so much intergenerational healing happened within those ceremonial spaces. So when my son came into who he is at 11 and brought us as a family together, my husband and I we realized how gendered and binaryism impacts our spaces, our education, our medical systems, our legal systems, just everything is so binary between only identifying as that male and female. So this prompted my husband and I, who's sitting in the front here, to really look at our cultural and language, our ancestral teachings of where our Testawinu, like our two-spirit, our in-between people, what happened, why were they erased, and where is their place within our ceremonies, within our land, within the roles and responsibilities as kin. And I should also like to share a little teaching about Cree language. It's a very verb-based, relational, spirit-based language. An example of this is the word for father, notawi, is the center of my universe. It's very different from saying father. It actually tells you what your role is as a father. Negawi, my mother, translates to the completer of my universe. So if you look at the womb, and you look at, of course, the male part of how it creates life, it's those words aren't specific to not just the bodily, the physical, but also to the spiritual, mental, and emotional. And so it's our role as a completer of the universe, the center of our universe, that we had a huge role to complete and raise our child in the most kind, loving, and belonging way, and making sure that our child knew who he was, where he came from, and where he's going. And so at 11 years old, when he shared that, and it shifted my life, our lives, in a way of making us look at the world in a different place, because just being brown in this, where we lived in rural Alberta, was dangerous. Like, as a brown woman walking in our rural roads, I would get stopped to ask if I needed a ride when I'm clearly working out. So to have, and it's a fear of mine as a mother, when we have the highest rates of murdering and missing Indigenous people in this land. As a parent, that is a daily fear of mine. And so, as my grandmother would remind me, when I was afraid, is to be in that place of courage. Let courage overcome that fear, and teach your children how to be in that place of courage of who they are and to walk. Or as my late artist mentor, Alex Janvier, would say, walk like a landlord. You belong to this land. And so that was an important teaching to bring my children. So not only that I raising my daughter, when those prescribed genders were given, and we had ideas of how to raise a boy and girl, we were challenged now, how do we raise our son that has a womb? And so we reached out to as many people that we knew who could guide us, and Mickey Wilson was one with the Edmonton Pride Center, and Dr. James McCocus, and his husband Anthony, who are our extended kin, who directed us to gender clinic here in Edmonton. So having just those two resources like that are, funded provincially, municipal, was really important for helping our family to kind of navigate these systems. Going to the gender clinic, where at the time was led by Dr. Warnicki, was incredibly affirming for us as parents, to the process, the very in-depth process that went into going through the clinic, and the support systems that began. The importance of our son being our teacher, of teaching us how to see the world from a place of love and acceptance. And this is what we learn as parents. And of course, we didn't stop there. We went to our elders. We're like, what is the word for two-spirit? What is the word for... We started asking all these questions and awakening that language. And then we also, with my position as a professor and a researcher, began researching this work around our rites of passage. And with the leadership of Dr. James and his husband, Anthony Johnson, was to develop a rites of passage. But also we created the first Indigenous PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, in 2016. And then it evolved into the work that we did with our OKM, Ogamau Kehamiigwanak, and then the research project of the Humble Lodge. And just this year, we started a nonprofit society of Fireweed Kinship. And we are most passionate about, we know how much culture, language, our traditional ancestral ways saves lives. And not only that, but they also bring our young, just not even our young, but also our older Tastuinu, our two-spirit kin, into knowing who they are, who their spirit is. When you are connected wholly with body, mind, and spirit, you are in your power, you're in your element of being beautiful. And so this is the work that we continue to do, which becomes really difficult when you start creating more violent systems through these bills of interfering, putting fear into whole society of, our kin that we have been silencing for generations. They're just waking up, like within our language, Cree language. And so this is again, like the bills that are promoting more transgender fear, and when you have that fear, then you're also breathing more life into a hatred in a sense. So I think I'll pause there, but just wanted to give a little context of the importance of why we do need systems that support families and parents to love, nurture, and raise their children with acceptance, and to see in a way that's non-binary. Hi.
Hello, my name is it's hard to top. I am not a public speaker, but here I am today because this is something that's very important to me and my community. I'm not a stranger to the government being against me. I'm an Indigenous two-spirit person. They don't really like anyone who looks like me or who is who I am. It's just like growing up and having the support from my community and my family. That is the reason why I am here. Without that, I don't think that I would be here. When I came out when I was 11, it was because I was on a path of destruction and sadness, and even at that young age, I had all that hatred and fear within myself. I'm like, well, if I can't be who I am, like, I don't want to be here. And these bills are putting that fear into this new generation of youth and children. The bills, they say that it's to protect kids and to protect the youth, but it's quite the opposite. These bills are doing a lot more harm and, in fact, killing kids more than the alternative. It's just, I am here today because of my community and the people who love me. And the bottom line is that, kids just want to be loved and accepted, and that's all you have to do to be a good parent or elder, mentor, however you're connected to them. It's just to be seen and to be loved. I can't really think of anything else. Hi.
I'm just going to add a statistic here that's actually quite recent. And 4 43% of trans people will attempt suicide at some point in their lives. And the researchers are telling us just since these bills have been announced, that number is looking now more like about 68% of trans people or youth in particular, are expressing suicidal ideation in ways that they haven't before. So not only do we need to support and care for, we also need to fight for the youth in our communities. Allison.
I've been asked to be here to share a story specifically about Bill 29, or the alleged Fairness and Safety in Sport Act. I'm telling not just a story about a trans person trying to play sports, but also what happens when one of us speaks up and how quickly we become unsafe. When I was young, I was very depressed and filled with what I would later recognize as gender dysphoria. I did terribly in school and with social interactions. One area that I didn't struggle with, though, was sports. It was a sanctuary for me. Even though I did not feel comfortable in my own body, I loved being on a team. I loved working together. I loved the rush of competition and the challenge of pushing myself. By the time I hit high school, a significant amount of my time and personality were tied up by various sports. My parents were busy fawning over my academically successful older sibling and essentially left me to do sports on my own. It was actually nice having something that felt like it was for me. I played a lot of different sports, and I was pretty good at most of them. I was never the star, but I was good enough and I was reliable. I was the kid who never got subbed off. In 2 years of senior football, I was the only player who never got benched. In rugby, they didn't even bother training anyone else to be in my position. They knew it was a waste of time. I was a constant on the field, and sports were the only constant in my life. I kept playing sports well into adulthood, and was even on a rugby team that toured and regularly played internationally. Once a head injury derailed that, I played hockey, which felt a lot safer. Once I finally was getting ready to start my gender transition, I assumed I would have to give up sports. Not only did sports suddenly feel very unwelcoming to me, I was worried that people would assume that if I was good, it was because I was trans, not because of my experience, ability, or training. I started only recreationally playing sports I knew I was bad at. You want to play basketball? Sure, I'm terrible at it. But then I started getting better at basketball, so I stopped that too. Before I even started on hormones, I decided to try cross-country skiing. I recall the last time I tried it. I was in junior high, and I hated it. 13-year-old me thought it was the dumbest thing. But as an adult, I figured it was something I could do on my own, and I wouldn't have to worry about teammates accepting or understanding me. It's also great for cardiovascular health, and something people can do well into their 70s. Why not give it a go? So I bought some gear and registered for the Birkebeiner, at Canada's largest Nordic skiing event, and not having been on skis in 20 years and signed up for the 33K race. I had 4 months to learn how to ski. I trained 5 days a week and got fairly decent at it. I loved the freedom, the exercise, being in nature, and pretending that day-to-day life didn't exist, even for a few hours at a time. I could go skiing by myself, but I really loved the events, meeting new people and trying to beat my personal best. In my first race, I came 13th out of 37 people in the men's 30 to 39 category. I was really happy with the result. The next year, I'd started HRT, but I still registered as a male because I thought most sporting orgs required trans person to have stable hormone levels for a year before competing. Cross-country skiing didn't have such a rule, but I thought it seemed fair. Even for that second Berkey, I had lost a lot of muscle mass and strength when I went on HRT. I had to relearn how to ski. I used to rely a lot on my upper body strength to carry me through the tough parts of the course. Losing the strength forced me to learn better form and techniques. It actually made me have to learn how to ski. In the end, my time started actually getting better than they were before hormones. In my second year, I won a couple medals at smaller events in the men's 30 to 39 category. In my third season, I was fully out as a trans woman and registered for the women's division. My time was a little faster, but I still placed worst in my division overall because actually the women's 40 to 49 division is more competitive. It's one of the more competitive divisions in cross-country skiing. Gender doesn't make a ton of difference in Nordic skiing, and it's okay to be old. Those are two of the things that drew me to the sport, honestly. But last winter, after Bill 29 was proposed, I didn't know there was even a place for me as a middle-of-the-pack, middle-aged skier. In the slightly more than recreational events I loved, I was concerned because one of the main sponsors of the Berkey was the provincial government. so they might be pretty quick to fall in line. I sent them an email asking if I would even be allowed to compete. I mentioned that I had competed previously, before and after my transition. Silence, there was no reply. I tried reaching out to 3 other events I competed in. Silence again. These are all organizations that had been very responsive in the past. I didn't want to risk it. So last year was the first time in 7 years that I did not register for a single event. I even tried just going out recreationally to a local park where I used to train and feel welcome. And I was met with hostile looks and remarks. The transphobes were now even at Gold Bar Park on a Saturday morning. I went home and put my skis away for the season. Around that time, through my work and my activism, I was giving workshops on the bills, and I had been talking to the media a bit. I did this one interview with the Canadian Press. I wanted to tell the story of a recreational cross-country skier being worried about her ability to even participate in the sport she loved. Now, I'd done enough interviews to know I have to be very, very careful with my words. There are certain words that really set people off and help them feel emboldened in sharing their bigotry. One of those words is confused. I would never use that word in any context in any interview, because once it comes out of my mouth, some keyboard warrior is going to say, of course, he's confused. He's confused about gender and everything else, immediately dismissing any point I could possibly make. I was on my way to work one day, and a friend told me that they saw my article. I looked it up, and I was horrified with the edits. I immediately knew things were going to get really bad for me. Among the bad edits, they said I was confused about a rumored 3rd division for trans athletes. I wasn't confused. I said I doubted the motives and sincerity and questioned how it would be implemented and funded. But I guess the editors thought they'd edit that down for brevity. In the interview, I said that I like competing and measuring my time against others, but that I'm not an elite athlete taking the spotlight away from biological women or hogging medals and scholarships. I wasn't taking anyone's spot at the Olympics. I just wanted to ski. I mentioned how I'd won a couple medals before transitioning, but haven't since. I tried trying to illustrate how much my performance changed when I started going on hormone replacement therapy. Instead, the article bolded the partial quote of, "I haven't won any races," which people jumped on, calling me entitled and implying that because I couldn't win as a middle-aged man, I decided to race as a woman. If you aren't familiar, articles from agents like the Canadian Press can be picked up and shared by news agencies everywhere. 36 different agencies picked this story up. Global, CTV, CBC, National Post, Toronto Sun, outlets from Vancouver Island to Moncton, New Brunswick. Most of the ones had to disable the comment sections because of all the hate I was receiving. Some people went to the trouble of tracking down my personal accounts and harassing me and giving me death threats because I spoke out about cross-country skiing. People said horrific, violent things to me that are not things I feel comfortable repeating in a church. I will say that some of them were very creative in their cruelty. I'd been entering races for years, but it suddenly became a problem when people who clearly had no interest in cross-country skiing until this article came out. There's even people who track me and follow me and post things after I do speaking events. So, Linda, if you're watching online, find a different hobby, please. If you put half your energy into your transphobic weird stuff, you could probably enjoy your retirement a lot more. It's an interesting thing, being one of the last groups that is deemed acceptable to publicly hate. These bills aren't law yet, but people already feel inspired to bigotry because of them. I didn't go skiing at all last year, and honestly, it might be a while before I do again. That's the point, though. These bills are the first step in attempting to eliminate us from everyday life. This legislation is about erasure, and it won't stop there if it doesn't have strong challenges and willing allies to take a stand and from putting in the work. If we can't play sports, we stay home. If we can't use washrooms, we stay home. If we can't access health care, we stay home and we die. Transgender people are your friends, your neighbors, your children, members of your congregation. We deserve to be able to get some exercise, improve our health, and enjoy the company of teammates and competitors, and maybe even win a medal or two.
I just want to take a second to acknowledge the courage and bravery that it takes to tell these stories. Our lives, even when they were good and have moments, are still full of pain. And we need to lift that up for people to see so that they can make it stop and then hold one another in care. It's a lot of courage. Thank you for your stories. Amanda.
Thank you. Is that close enough? How's that? Yeah, okay. I'd like to point out that I'm also an HRT and nobody cares about that. More, okay, I'm just gonna hold. So, people are pretty selective in when they care. Before I really kind of get into what I was gonna talk about, I wanna talk about one of the reasons why I talk. And there's lots of reasons actually, but one of the reasons why I talk about this subject is for a long time I ran a queer women's group. And all kinds of people came, all different ages, trans women, cis women, you know, people came for all different reasons, mostly because they were looking for community. And one of the populations that came was women who came out when they were older. They transitioned when they were older. They waited until their partners died, or they waited until their children were old and grown before they felt like they could come out and be who they were. And so I give talks like this because I don't want anybody else to live a life of regret because they have shame about who they are. Also, you know, Mickey was talking about suicide statistics, and I need more than 2 hands to count the number of trans friends that I have lost to suicide. And over the last couple of years, there's been a lot. And so that statistic, while very shocking, is true, and those are real people behind that. And I just want to thank you for coming today. You know, as I was kind of like walking around earlier, I saw a lot of people who I knew were going to be allies, and they're already kind of on board with, you know, what we're saying up here. And so thank you for staying and listening, because this is everyone's work. We have to do this work together. I also wonder if some of you are here and you aren't totally sure what we're saying. And I really want to thank you for staying and not hiding in the basement and helping clean up the supper so you didn't have to hear what we say, because change and understanding happens in relationship, and there's so much misinformation out there that we can't have these conversations, we can't progress in these conversations unless we're willing to listen. And so, thank you. So as Mickey said, I've been a teacher for more than 20 years. I've taught everything from grade 2 to grade 12. I was a reading pullout teacher. I was a teacher librarian. I spent 7 years as a diversity consultant, focusing on sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression. And now I'm a consultant working in mental health, and I'm also a school counselor. I'm also a cis lesbian, and I have a wife and two children who are the greatest human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And I know everybody likes their kids so much, right? It's because everybody thinks their kids are the best, but like, I actually have it nailed down. And so I just really want to start with a simple truth that every child and every youth deserves to feel safe, seen, and supported at school. No matter their background, no matter who they are, that's not a controversial statement. It's not a political statement. It's basic human kindness and decency. And that for anybody here who isn't really sure about what I'm saying, okay, like that's a place to start, all right? You don't need to understand trans identities, and you don't need to understand what non-binary means for different people, and you don't have to like get being gay. All you have to do is just be respectful and kind, right? It's just got to be a nice person. And so, well, we're just going to start from there. But right now in Alberta, we're really failing some of our most vulnerable students, most vulnerable children, our trans and gender diverse students, because of harmful new laws and policies that are really being passed under the guise of parental rights. And so at the center of this is students. So one of the things that I do in my job is that I work with the GSA, and I've worked with many GSAs. I've worked with junior high GSAs and high school GSAs, and I've supported all kinds of different GSAs. Oh, that's such a great question. Okay, so a GSA, so some of you, oh, an HRT. HRT was hormone replacement therapy, all right? Perimenopause babes, woo, woo. And a GSA, so some of you might know it as a gay-straight alliance, and then it kind of became queer-straight alliance, and now we're using gender and sexualities alliance, and basically it's just a club for kids to hang out and feel safe. These are groups for anybody and everybody, and at the core of it is an understanding that that it's a safe place for all genders, for all orientations, all that kind of stuff. So they're pretty cool. They're wonderful. There's a lot of rainbow cupcakes eaten in GSAs. And so also as a school counselor, I talk a lot with queer kids. And when all of this started rolling out, you know, when Danielle Smith first made that announcement about plans to talk about, you know, like what identities kids were allowed to have in schools and what was going to happen in sports, and talking about, you know, like medical transitions in terms of things that actually weren't really happening. But all of these kids felt it, and they were supposed to. That was a really clear message that people, adults, didn't like them, didn't care if they were safe, didn't care if they were happy, didn't care if they were suicidal. They wanted them to just fall in line. And so I had students who didn't want to come to school, kids who had just sort of started coming out at school, testing the waters, you know, like seeing how people reacted and gearing up to tell their parents, who went right back into the closet. I've got students who really aren't sure what's going to happen next year, what's going to happen to them in September, who are terrified that they're going to be outed to households that are not safe, to parents who aren't in a place right now to understand. And to be clear, when you go back into the closet, your identity doesn't change, right? You can't trick or badger somebody into being gay or trans, just like you can't trick or badger someone into being cis or straight. All you can do is make them desperately unhappy. I'm seeing students with increasingly challenging mental health, lots of anxiety, lots of depression, kids having panic attacks about this. And it's really important to point out that even though poor mental health and mental illness, those rates are really high in the queer and trans community, we have a lot of studies that show it is not because someone is queer or trans, it's because what we do to queer and trans individuals is how we treat them. And when we have students who are well supported at home and well supported at school, their mental health is the same as their peers. All right, it's what we're doing to kids. And really, it's important to know that students are telling us that this policy makes them feel invisible and exposed all at the same time. And of course, we want to center students in this because they're really catching the brunt of it. But there's lots of people who work in school buildings who are also grieving and frightened about the changes that they're seeing in our communities. Teachers and EAs are really struggling with how these policies and legislation are affecting their own mental health. We have teachers and EAs who feel like they have to choose between the law and protecting their students. We're seeing a slow erasure of more diverse stories in our communities because teachers are just unsure. It's unclear about what's allowed and what's not allowed, and so there's less conversation. There's less picture books showing different kinds of people. There's not recognition of pride in the same way. Some of the really sophisticated and rich conversations that we need students to have in our social studies classes and our English language arts classes, they're not being had because teachers don't know how to have them. They're scared that some parent's going to phone in and be angry and ask them to be fired. And they're worried that their administration is not going to back them up. And so really, it's just kind of like heavy hearts. Lots of worry about the future. And librarians, man, like, if you don't work in a school, you might not know, but like librarians are the heart of our schools so often. They are the ones who are like checking on that kid who doesn't have any friends, who's eaten by themselves in the hallway. They're creating a safe space for them. They're making sure that everybody sees themselves. There's something called, so Emily Stile has a theory about books as mirrors and books as windows. And so books as mirrors is where we read a story and we see ourselves. We see our families, we see our culture, we see the food we eat, and it helps us kind of deepen our own understanding of ourselves. But we also need books that are windows. We need books about people that aren't like us, that live in different countries, have a different skin color, worship in a different way, have a different orientation, have a different gender. And the reason we need that is not indoctrination, it's empathy. We need that because books teach us empathy. They teach us how and who other people are. It makes them real to us. And so we have librarians who are worried about, well, can they put out Pride books this year? Can they put out books with different kinds of families and different kinds of identities, all right? And not to change who anybody is, but so people can see themselves and people who aren't like them. You know, and my kids are young, they're in kindergarten. And I had to fight to get the teacher to read a book where it was a family like ours. How old do your kids have to be in order for my kids to see their family in a picture book? It's not indoctrination, it's just seeing the world expansively. You know, and like coming down the line, principals are going to be in some very difficult situations. There's a lot of expectations being placed on them. They have to make a lot of judgment calls about what is going to be done. And they're terrible choices where the answers aren't really clear, and if they make the wrong decision, it could be catastrophic. And so we know what the research tells us, and this is what any counselor or teacher or pediatrician will tell you, that when trans youth are affirmed with their identities, when they're called by their names and their pronouns, their risk of depression and suicide drops dramatically. And when we take that affirmation away, those risks rise again, fast. This is what we're doing to kids. And I want you to understand that supporting trans kids does not mean excluding parents. Schools always want to include parents. We always want to be a team. But children are not belongings. We don't own them. They're their own human beings who are figuring stuff out, and they are allowed to have a voice in what they say. And so we need to include students in these conversations. We can't just out them in some kind of panic. And just to be clear, this is not administrative red tape. This is a real coordinated effort to erase 2S LGBTQIA students from public education, to make them feel that who they are is controversial or wrong or dangerous to talk about. And for what? Okay, sorry. Is it my 10 minutes? Okay, maybe I went over. Let me just see. Okay, can I read like 4 more sentences? Okay. It feels a little unfinished at this point. Okay, okay, Mickey, yeah. And so really, we're seeing distraction from what's happening at the government levels right now, and scoring political points. They're saying it's about neutrality. Neutrality is not safety. Silence is not safety. Censorship is not safety. I'll tell you what safety really looks like. Safety is a teacher calling you by your true name without asking why. Safety is walking into a library and seeing a story that reflects who you are. Safety is knowing that if you're questioning or scared or just trying to figure yourself out, you have somebody that you can talk to without that conversation being reported as a crime. Safety is the GSA room on a Tuesday afternoon. It's a hallway poster that says you belong. It's a counselor's door slightly ajar. It's the knowledge that even if your home is complicated or confusing, school is a safe space to grow. And we've really stripped that safety away for far too many kids. And if we care about their futures, and if we care about any future, we need to give it back.
I get the privilege of adding on. Just another little statistic that I learned a number of years ago when I used to be with Egal Canada, and we did a whole study on GSAs in schools. And if there is a GSA, I just want to get this right, if there's a GSA in a school, it reduces suicidal ideation in all kids in the school. In fact, the suicidal ideation rate in heterosexual boys goes down if there's a GSA in a school, if there's a safe place in a school. Why? Because if those kids are safe, I'm safe too, those boys think. Right? That's really important. I just want to, and I know Amanda didn't talk about this, we talked about it earlier, but I want to let you folks know about the targeted book banning that's happening. I'm sure you've seen it on the news, that the government is going to do a review and survey about books in school, and you might have noticed that every single book that they identified was LGBTQ2S+ people. So it's really important that you find that survey, get on the web, find that survey, answer it, and tell the government to get out of our libraries. I just want to remind you that if you've got a question for our panel or for anyone, not because of that question, but if there's something you didn't understand and want a question answered, wave around. Those folks will find you a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll get them up here after. Our last formal speaker tonight, I'm going to ask them all if they have anything they want to add, but is Rachel Young, a member of our committee from Grace United in Lloydminster, what it's like to be as a person of faith living with this.
I was a trans woman. I had my legal paper stating my sanity, suffered the physical exams, and changed my birth certificate to female. I am not afraid. I was a trans woman. I had completed my gender reassignment surgery, changed my identity over 3 years, and integrated into life as a woman. I would eventually try to join events such as squash or volleyball with my peers. But it wasn't good enough. So my coworkers would not let me use the shower or change after company recreational events. Eventually, I chose to avoid all social events completely. I am hurt, but still not afraid. I was a trans woman. I didn't know why my coworker was sabotaging me. Why is she doing that? Why do the others support her? I thought the women's bathroom was a sanctuary. But it wasn't good enough. So I stopped using the washroom on the same floor, and I did not spend any more time socializing with the other women. I think I'm scared. This makes no sense, and it hurts so bad. I was just a trans woman. Why were the people around me stirring more and more? Why was there a protest against me in public? What have I done? I haven't done anything. I used to be a first responder, and I've even helped some of these people in the past. But it wasn't good enough. And when I was told I was infested with demons, I was going to hell. I was heartbroken. Am I going to get jumped and beaten like I did growing up? I am so afraid, and I can't stop crying. I know my soul is safe, but it feels hopeless. I am just a trans woman. My government has legally declared me a threat to society. My government can erase my gender marker and my identity without consent. My government will declare me mentally unfit and force me into an institution. My government will detain me with men instead of women with callous disregard to my safety. But it wasn't good enough, and the people do not care. But it wasn't good enough, and the government will not care. But it wasn't good enough. I am no longer afraid. I'm terrified.
I just want to ask folks if they have, after hearing all of you, any of you have anything else you'd like to add or say? Okay.
Specifically, I just want to say thank you to the United Church of Canada, to this region, for showing me such love and such acceptance. I would not have been able to pursue a course in ministry if it wasn't for all of you. I want you to know that. Okay?
Just a couple quick things. First off, I just want to, in terms of the survey about the books, like when it came out, I already had 3 of the 4 books, so I ordered the 4th one. But I just want to say, if you're filling out the survey, the questions are very, very leading. They're very like, oh, do you support sexually explicit things for minors? It's like, no, that's not what this is about. And so just be wary of that when you go and fill out the survey, but please do fill out the survey. And I just want to do a little thing, just because I have worked in gender-affirming healthcare for a number of years now as well. And as someone who it saved my life, and there's been times in healthcare where I've actually saved other people's lives and not just gender-diverse ones. So it's, one life saved with gender-affirming care could be more. And that's an important thing to keep in mind.
I think that was really important for us as a family too, was having those systems in place of not only supporting our son, but also supporting us as parents, supporting our son. And so those clinics, those organizations, those books are so, as everyone just reiterating, very life-saving. Thank you.
Emery, anything else?
I just also want to say that this isn't just an attack on trans people and that it affects everyone, because there's already been multiple cases now where people who think someone is trans and they aren't, they're cis, and they receive, scrutiny or hatred as well. So it's not just us being attacked, it's everyone else as well.
That's right. It's important to remember that lots of folks don't look feminine enough, don't look masculine enough, and they are at risk as well and are often harmed and pay the price of things like this legislation. So I love these people. I've known many of them for years and years, and Allison is a new friend. I just know it. But I really want to say that when we talk about sport, and I want to mention something about sport in particular. So we often think about sports, and they talk about competitive sports a lot. But you know that a little trans girl cannot play on the girls' sports teams in school with this legislation. So if you're 7 years old and socially transitioning, you won't be able to play with your other friends on the girls' team in school in grade 2. Pardon me? Yeah, no, nothing happened yet, but in grade 2, you won't be allowed to play with the other girls, right? So it's really insidious law that's meant to harm. We need to be really clear in our understanding that this legislation is meant to harm. They talk about caring for children. They don't, I was going to say something else. They don't care about us at all. In fact, they would rather we didn't exist. And pushing us out of sight is the easiest way. The easiest way. They want to harm us. And so, I'm going to get, are there questions? Are there some? There's some around, so if you can gather them up. But I also want to talk about what opportunities you have as individuals and as representatives of your faith communities. So if you go back to that display, that really fancy, colorful, affirming display back there, over the next few days, there are form letters. You can just sign one, turn it upside down, stick it in an envelope there, turn it upside down, and if you write your MLA's name on it with a sticker, we'll make sure your MLA gets it, but this letter is made out to lots of important people. All of them say Premier Daniel Smith, Honorable Adriana Lagrange, Honorable Dimitrios Nicolaides, Honorable Joseph Schau, Honorable Christina Gray. People will get this letter, and we'll make sure that they all go out in the mail. There are postcards there, and there's postcard prompts so that you can write a short message, targeted message, with a nice little colorful front that says hello with a smiley face. They'll get a couple of those, and they'll know when they look at them what it's going to say. So that's what you can do. And there are other documents there. This is the lovely. Imagine getting that in the mail for the first couple times. And then they're going to know. There's also a copy of the Northern Spirit, the Northern Spirit Executive's letter. If you haven't read it, please do. It was powerful. They had something to say. And I'm just going to read an excerpt from it quickly, just so you get a sense of where our regional council sits on this issue. It says, "Dear all of those people I already named," it says, "We, the Northern Spirit Regional Council of the United Church of Canada, demand that you rescind Bills 26, 27, and 29. Nothing polite, they demand. We are already witnessing the negative impact of this legislation and its preceding debate in our churches and in the communities they serve. We reject a society where the rights of some take precedence over the rights of others. Such a society is not in keeping with the commandment to love one another. Our faith leads us to condemn all three bills and their intended impacts. We believe Albertans want their government to treat all people equitably, to protect everyone's human rights, and to ensure anyone facing barriers to health care are provided with science-based treatments and support to navigate the medical system. We are outraged that you proclaimed that these laws were made to care for Albertans. Caring actions work to reduce harm and pain and increase safety and space. Mandating that teachers and parents silence children and youth's understanding of themselves and the world is not a caring action. Caring actions require listening to actual needs, including those named by medical professionals and agencies serving gender-diverse populations. We stress that it is our faith in God, our call from Jesus, and the courage from the Holy Spirit that we believe empowers and demands that we cry out against these unjust laws. We, the Northern Spirit Regional Council of the United Church of Canada, demand that you rescind Bills 26, 27, and 29. That is our United Church. That is our region. And if you want to write your own letter, there are documents back there that says expressing your concerns, and here's how to set up your letter. It will walk you through writing up a personal letter. So I would encourage you all to write a letter and then go back to your congregation members and ask your council to write a letter. Ask your congregants to write a letter. It doesn't matter if you're an affirming congregation or not. These are people that we need to care for as people of faith. Questions? Do we have the questions? Oh, lots of questions. Well, here's an easy one. This is a rural question. I'll tell you, I live in rural Alberta. It says, trans, afraid of working out at the gym, how can we advocate or be sensitive to helping? I'll just say, I'm going to let somebody else answer this. I think I'm the only one that lives in rural Alberta, though. But so there's people in this room that have known me for years, and I've been out everywhere, like everywhere for years and years and years. And I am not out in my town and community. It's not safe. I work with children, and it's not safe. It's dangerous. I had somebody come and say to me the other day that they had been told that I was trans. Was it true? And I lied. And I said, no, it's not true. That's a hard place to live. And I'm pretty confident and say I'm trans and queer all over the place, but not there. It's really important if you live in rural Alberta to maybe wear an ally button, a "You're safe with me" button. So I don't have all the answer of how to be in a gym in rural Alberta. I don't go to the gym. I don't even tell people who I am. It's a hard one, and I think it's one that the affirming committee is going to have to wrestle with and create a means of support. So I'm a parent of a trans kid who also came out at the age of 12 and was supported by a fantastic gender clinic. The gender-affirming health care my son received saved his life. PFLAG saved our family. My son is 18 and living happily as his true self. To think that the care he received could be made illegal terrifies me. Thank you for sharing your stories. The United Church has almost 80 congregations in Alberta north of Red Deer. Panelists, what action do you want us to take? What can we do as a denomination, a region, as people of faith? 80 congregations is a lot of congregations.
Does anyone remember the 19-cent campaign about 10 to 15 years ago? The government tried to delist gender reassignment surgery, and so what we did is we combated this by joining with the senior citizens. And we made a point to say this defunding was costing you 19 cents. So what you can do is write the letters, write the cards, file the human rights complaints. If they want to use the notwithstanding clause, let them. But they're going to have to do it every time we raise a complaint. And it can be done. We won then, and I think we can win now.
One thing I think that's really important, especially in the smaller communities, is just having it be known that you are a safe place, because there are fewer and fewer spaces. And as someone, I help trans people of all ages navigate towards resources. And it's so difficult to, like, oh yeah, the nearest resource for you is 3 hours away. So even if, you can't prescribe, you can't do the other things, just a place that they are welcome. A place where, if the outside is hostile, a place that they know won't be hostile. And that would go so far, and that's my hope from this, is that, again, you don't have to have everything figured out, but be kind, be welcoming, approach members of the community with an open heart.
One of the things that I think you could do in some of those 80 congregations is very hard in small rural communities. I attest to that. But you could have a pride lunch in June in your church basement. Make rainbow cupcakes, invite your congregation and people from the community. No, if you're all there and a bunch of other people are there, will they know who's who? Maybe not. But if you create a space in your space that's safe, but you need to make sure it's safe. But if you create a safe space, it might take a few times, but people will learn that that's a haven for them. And that goes to this question. Says, what are the steps that we can take to help young, it says gay people, but we're talking about trans people in particular here, to support them and be a safe haven. So that's, anybody else have any other ideas? I mean, in the city, it's a lot easier. Rural communities, not so much. It's a lot of work. And you gotta have courage, because you'll also, I think the Bible tells us that there's a cost to loving and caring, right? We follow someone who paid that cost. And so we need to be willing to pay the price. That's daring justice, right? Anybody else?
I was just thinking of my community, Salt Lake Cree Nation, and how it took a while as well to getting more like Gender 101 awareness in the community. And so recently, our community has been inviting my little brother, Keesick Whiskey Jack, also known as Cedar T, to come into the community and perform. So having an incredible drag performance, yes, it's Cedar T. And so it was incredible, just to have that kind of celebration of that incredible art, music, dance, dress, fashion, you name it. It's incredible. Yes.
You could always do a drag show in your basement. And That's a real naming of support. Drag shows are pretty dangerous these days. They're very controversial, rare. I mean, they've been around forever. You've watched them on TV. They've entertained troops. But you could have one in your church hall. Great. Amanda.
When I'm working with teachers, when they're supporting trans youth, the main message is just believe them. Don't pathologize it. They don't have to explain it. Just like everybody's identity, it might evolve and change, and that is typical and to be expected. But when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. Don't dead name them. Use the name that they want you to use the pronouns that they want you to use, and that just kind of goes back to that baseline of respect.
And something I think is important is, like, don't just claim to be safe, you actually have to kind of walk the walk, and people might be a little hesitant because there's so many times that, I'll go into a place that might have like a rainbow sticker on it, and then I'll just receive garbage treatment still. So you have to be willing that people will have some hesitation, especially it's like, okay, I haven't had any good experiences in my town, why is this place going to be different? So that's, I think, an important thing to do, but I like the idea of mixing events, so it's not like you're outing someone, like you step into a thing and there's like 4 obviously queer people, and like, okay, this is where they all are, right? Like, it also helps demystify things, right? And so on a side note, I'm also a drag performer, so you can book me for your churches.
This note is not a question. It just comments that if your ideas like if your local high school is having a pride walk or a pride march or a pride something, contact them and let them know who you are, that your church is supportive, and maybe show up with some members from your congregation to support them. Bring rainbow cupcakes. And then to show up in support in small rural communities. Somebody wants to know how to access the survey for books. Really, if you just look up book, what do they call it? Book. It's a book review. Oh, Chloe has the link, so check out it. Yep. Okay, that's Chloe. She's got the link. Check with her if you want. You're going to have a lineup at the end. Really answer that survey. Last question that I'm going to ask all of you to answer is, how do you hold on to hope in these times? And it's signed a trans person who is also worried.
The reason I left my position as a diversity consultant was because it was breaking my soul. I felt like I saw the worst of people every single day, and the most vulnerable kids being targeted and kicked about, and it was heartbreaking. And I think really the only reason I made it 7 years was that I really had to believe that people who were doing harm thought that they were doing good, thought that they were protecting kids. And so I always rooted my understanding in that, and that we had the same goal in the end, even though what I saw from them was quite harmful. And so that was a way that allowed me to keep the door open instead of othering other people as bad or stupid or evil. And sometimes in those conversations, when you leave that door open, miracles happen and change happens.
Sure, let's pass the mic, so I'll go next. Okay, so how I stay hopeful, it's difficult. It's really difficult. And as mentioned, these bills and a lot of the behaviors, they affect a lot of people. They're targeted towards people that look like me. Like, oftentimes they even forget that trans men exist. it affects everyone. It affects cis people, it affects trans people, but they're targeted towards people who look like me. And it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. But, however, there is just such joy in being able to be my authentic self. And I have achieved more in the 7 or 8 years since I came out than I did in like the 30 plus years before that, because I actually want to be here. I have motivation. I dream of the future for the first time. It scared me when that happened. It happened like a few years ago. I'm like, what? I'm actually planning for a future. What is this? And so there's that. Like, it's just the capacity for joy and the community that I've found and the community I've been able to build. And they are the most magical group of people you could ever hope to meet. And so it's in community and in my capacity for joy.
Just having my son exist. It's a reflection of my joy and hope.
I mean, like you said, it is quite difficult to be hopeful, but like I said earlier, I am here because of the support and love from my community. I'm here because of the ancestors who came before me and their resilience. It's within me, and I come from a long line of very strong warrior women, and I'm very proud to be who I am. But yeah, this isn't the first time the government has come for trans people, and we have prevailed through it, and I'm sure we'll get through it again.
I sorry I didn't go first. I actually had to think about this. I didn't know what was wrong when I was struggling before I changed. I went on antidepressants, and then this little tiny voice popped in my head, said, "Why do you want to be a girl?" And I answered. I said, "I don't know, but it has to happen." I want to tell you that why I transitioned to was because I could no longer reconcile the lie I was telling to myself and the lie I was presenting to the world. A lie about omission, to be fair. And so I did it out of a sense of duty. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die telling the truth. So I went through, did the steps, did the procedures, still was happy, thought I was happy. But when I realized I had healed is when I had been complaining about something, and I realized that I was not complaining about a trans issue, I was complaining about a women's issue. And at that point, I knew that I had crossed the Rubicon. So now I know I can look at my mirror, no matter what choices I do, no matter what struggles I do, I can look at that mirror and I can know that I'm telling the truth from my soul. So if you're struggling, don't give up. We're here, we're walking loud and proud for you, so you don't have to, okay? You have everybody in this congregation behind you, so you're not alone.
So I started my transition 36 years ago. I was the first out trans masculine person in Edmonton. And I had lived unhappily in the lesbian community for years, and they thought I went to the dark side. And it was a difficult time. And I think, I ended up in a psych ward because of identity issues. Now I know for the first time when I was 12. and I attempted suicide. I was one of those people that is in the statistics. But there was this woman, I remember her name is Lorna Murray, and on Pride Festival Sunday one day, she was standing down, and I had told her. In fact, I went for a walk with some of the key people in the community, Michael Fair, Murray Billett, Lorna Murray, those folks, and said, this is who I am, and I'm afraid because we don't support trans people. And so on that Pride Sunday at Gazebo Park down in McIntyre, under the gazebo in McIntyre Park, Lorna Murray stood up and gave a speech about how our community needs to shift and that we needed to be allies and that we needed to recognize that our umbrella of a rainbow needed to include trans people. This woman stood in front of, for the first time ever, I heard trans people mentioned at Pride. And that started my journey of activism, and I'm still here. And I think that's what gives me hope, is doing this every single day, saying, you belong, I belong, we belong together, and nothing else is acceptable. Nothing less is acceptable. So, again, letters are back there. I would encourage you to do that. And I would like to thank Emery and Lana, Allison, Amanda, and Rachel for giving us their time, and the committee for supporting them, and all the great work that all of us do to make this world and this denomination a safer place. Thank you so much. We don't have a song. We don't have a prayer. Well, we have lots of prayers. But we do have an invitation for you to go in peace, drive safely, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, ask him.
Yeah, I almost cried like a whole bunch of people. So thanks a lot for that. Yeah. That was really powerful.
I don't have any complaints about the church, so what can I say?